And so when I was going through BUDS, I'm like, there is no way I am ever going to go be in a job where that is my role. Like I don't care how badly this hurts. I don't care what I'm going through. I know what is waiting for me if I don't make it through this training. And so it's not even a question in my mind of maybe I should just quit, get the warm cup of coffee, a warm shower, and try something else. Like, I know what is waiting for me if I quit. And so it was never an option on the table.
Welcome to Combat Story. I'm Ryan Fugit, and I served Warzone tours as an Army attack helicopter pilot and CIA officer over a 15-year career. I'm fascinated by the experiences of the elite in combat. On this show, I interview some of the best to understand what combat felt like on their front lines. This is Combat Story. Today we have a combat story from Kevin Seiff, a former Marine officer turned Navy SEAL who now leads an initiative called the Vet Collective and hosts the Harder, Not Smarter podcast with Green Beret Greg VanDyne. We dove into several challenges in Kevin's route to become a Marine and SEAL, including 2 attempts to get into the Naval Academy and 2 attempts at Hell Week and BUDS. We also dive into great reads, why there's no such thing as shortcuts when it comes to BUDS or selection, overcoming swimmer-induced pulmonary edema, the strange and slippery ritual that is climbing Herndon Mountain at the Academy, stronger mindset, how some SEALs stop chafing in their more sensitive regions, and tough transitions out of the military into civilian life. Kevin's Vet Collective has 80 members at this point, and his newsletter numbers over 6,000. He spent 12 years in service chasing the dragon, as he calls it, trying to find his way into combat, which can even be a challenge within the Marine Corps and the SEAL teams. That said, he's been undeterred in trying to help other vets navigate the transition out of uniform and find renewed purpose the way he has. With that, please enjoy this episode with Kevin Seiff. Kevin, thanks so much for taking the time to hop on the show and share your story with us.
My pleasure, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
The place I'd like to start is your LinkedIn profile. It really kind of caught my eye, and it's the reason I reached out in the first place. But you have this note on there that you're on a mission to help 100,000 veterans start their own business. And you've got the Vet Collective, you've got a lot going on. But I wanted to start with that mission, like where it comes from, why that, of all things you could have chosen. You've got an amazing background, academic, military. Like, why is that the mission for you?
The transition out of the military is an absolute struggle. Anybody that I've talked to, and I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of veterans and service members, a lot of them think they have a good plan. They have jobs lined up, they have their moves set up, they know where they're going to be going after. They feel like they have a soft landing coming, and almost to a number, I talk with them later, or I'm hitting them at like the 2-year mark after getting out, and they didn't realize that they were struggling. It's almost like the boiling the frog analogy, where they don't realize that they're struggling after leaving the military until they're already deep in it, and they don't feel like they have that sense of connectedness. They don't feel like they have that sense of purpose that was so important while they were in. Nobody joins the military to become a millionaire.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Very, very few people excel financially. You can do well. Don't get me wrong. Like, I know plenty of people that are living very comfortably in the military, and then once they get out, but you're never going to become a millionaire because of the military. You join for a variety of reasons, whether you want to serve your country, you want to do cool stuff, and there's nothing wrong. And that's why I joined. I wanted to do fun, exciting things that you just couldn't do in the normal world. You want to work with awesome people, go into crazy places, experience things that are just outside the normal society's comfort zones. Jumping out of planes, shooting guns, traveling to dangerous places. And all that goes into this package of what it really means being in the military. And I think a lot of guys and girls take it for granted what all that really builds into a full life satisfactory environment. And then you get out, and the biggest one I see is guys going into like the finance space or something like that. Or consulting. They see $300,000, $400,000 a year salaries, but they're working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. They have no free time. They have no real relationships with their coworkers, or even at the far end of the spectrum, they don't trust their coworkers. They feel like that everyone's going to stab them in the back so that they can get the promotion. And the transition quickly turns into something that they're not prepared for. And I went through the same thing. I had a job lined up when I got out. I got out February 29th of 2020, which I remember because it was 2 weeks before COVID.
Oh my gosh.
March 13th was when California thought it was the brilliant decision to outlaw going to the beaches. COVID got spread hanging out on the sandy beach away from other people. And so like there's all kinds of turmoil going on in my life. Not only am I getting out of the military after 12 years, I did 4 years in the Marines and then 8 years in the SEAL teams. There was a huge amount of change in my life, but then there's all these other extraneous circumstances going on. And I lasted about 10 months at my first job. And really what it came down to is I didn't like working for somebody else in a very transactional environment. I got out and became a recruiter in the life science space. San Diego has a huge life science biotech community here. And I thought it'd be a great fit. I got to talk with people. I get to connect businesses with people. I get to control my own hours. The pay is pretty lucrative in the recruiting space. And so I thought I had everything lined up. I'm working from home. I can travel. And what I found was that when the career becomes transactional, it becomes about the money and not about the purpose you're serving, service members and veterans do not do well. And so I decided to leave and start my own recruiting agency. I can do this on my own. I don't need their backing. It's not a complicated industry. It's like real estate. No one goes to school to be a realtor. It's can you have a sense of organization, effort, drive to complete tasks and see it through and control your own schedule. And so I decided to leave and create my own business, which I did literally in the span of a week. I had no entrepreneurial experience. I had no entrepreneurial aspirations when I first left the military. I thought people that started businesses had to have some crazy idea that was new and unique. From the Bay Area, I grew up around the .com space. And what I found is you can create a very successful, lucrative, profitable business without a whole lot of effort or training. I had to go through a lot of hurdles and trials and tribulations to make it happen. But literally in the span of 6 months, I was profitable, making good money, and actually bringing on people onto my team. And so what I saw out of this was the recruiting was fine. I actually closed that business recently to pursue some of the other things that we can talk about later. But recruiting is fine. But what I found I really enjoyed and actually gave me purpose and meaning again was building a company and creating something that I'm excited about and getting to design it and problem solving and doing more than just showing up, making money for somebody else. And instead creating something that I have ownership of. And I think that's really meaningful to veterans, is having ownership of something you're working on.
And that's where that kind of idea of empowering other vets to create businesses comes from, like that experience you had. And now it's, how can I make that for other people?
Yeah. So I guess to answer your original question after that long-winded response, through my experience of seeing, I feel this purpose again. How can I help other veterans have something similar? Because I was having so many, once I started posting on LinkedIn, I was just going to be putting out, hey, this is how you file for S Corp or C Corp. This is how you get your DBA or you're doing business as. This is how you open up bank accounts. These are some strategies. Just putting that stuff out there, all of a sudden launched my LinkedIn. I had nothing I was actually posting on there before. And now that I was putting this general information about entrepreneurship, I was getting email after email after email from veterans saying, I don't like what I'm doing. I'm not happy. How can I start a business? How did you start a business? And so I just started putting information together to help them get to the same spot I was without as many of the mistakes and the issues where they have to figure it out on their own. If I can just make a checklist of all the things that I did to get my business going, it'll make it a whole lot easier for other people to follow in my path.
And you've got, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like your newsletter has something like 6,000 folks following that.
We're just over 6,000 on the newsletter. My LinkedIn profile went from about 3,000 to I think I'm about to hit 30,000 followers on there. We're just putting out more information. The Vet Collective community has a little over 80 members now. We have the podcasts, which is Harder Not Smarter. We've had
I love that name. We got to dig into that name in a second, but yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And so we have all these little things that we're putting together to create different mediums of information sharing, like how to get people in touch, or how to get veterans in touch with other entrepreneurs, how to provide resources, how to provide guides, how to provide software platforms that were created by other veterans. Like we have some marketing and SEO related platforms that were created by veterans, and now we're white labeling it and offering them to other veterans to improve their own businesses.
You mentioned you grew up in kind of the Silicon Valley area, and you said a little bit of that idea of going into the military was chasing adventure. What was the discussion like, I don't know, with your parents, your friends, your family, as you were making that call to go into service?
For me, it was pretty early on. I discovered the military. I had both my grandfathers served in the military. One was a merchant marine captain during World War II, driving the Liberty ships around the Pacific and the Atlantic. The other was a medical professional on the Mercy during the Korean War. He wasn't a doctor yet. I think he was in medical school, and he got called over to support. And so both of them served. And then I had two uncles that served. One was a submariner, and the other was a Huey pilot in Vietnam. So I had some spattering of military service. We're a patriotic family. It wasn't a huge thing. It wasn't like everything revolved around service and other stuff like that. My dad's a doctor. My mom teaches marine biology. So it wasn't a direct line, but through some of the interactions I had, I learned about the SEAL teams. My cousin joined the Navy, and his best friend, the two of them went through aircrew chief school together. And one of them went on to become a SEAL. And he was always around when I was a kid. I think I was 12 years old when I met him. Steve Potter, awesome guy, just like international man of mystery. But he was always around when I was growing up. And so I'd hear stories about him going through BUDs and the stuff they did in the SEAL teams. And this was pre 9/11 stuff. The SEALs were a little known community then. It was all volleyball and golf in Coronado back then. But it sounded like such a cool and exciting job to have, community to be a part of. I was always a thrill seeker. And so when I was 12, I found out about it. And throughout middle school, high school, I never found anything better. And so I learned about the Naval Academy. You can go to college for free. I didn't really know the difference between officer and enlisted. I didn't do that much research. I was like, oh, you can become a SEAL from the Naval Academy and you can get your college paid for. That sounds like a great fit. Let's do that. And so obviously my parents were stoked that I went that route. The Naval Academy sounds like a great opportunity for their kid. And it was just one of those things that I always had the vision of becoming a SEAL. It was always the end goal. And I had so many obstacles along the way. I didn't get into the Naval Academy the first time. From the Naval Academy, I didn't get SEALs. I had a super competitive year. There's, I think, 90 people that put SEALs as their first choice.
Yeah. You go Marines, I think, right?
I went Marines for 4 years. I'm the weird one that jumped services as well. From the Marine Corps, I tried getting to the Special Operations community, both MARSOC and SEALs. I was applying to both to see which one I'd get first. SEALs on the second try from the Marine Corps came through, and went to BUDs. I got to do Hell Week twice because I got swimmer-induced pulmonary edema. So it was like constant. Honestly, it was harder for me to get to BUDs than it was for me to make it through, because at that point, I'd been trying to get that for like 15 years. I think I was 27 when I finally got to BUDs.
How did you handle it, I guess, not getting into the Naval Academy the first time, which can be a bit of a blow to a kid at that age?
It was definitely an eye-opening thing. In my mind, I was like, hey, you just apply and you get in. And then I didn't get in. My parents were like, what other schools did you apply to? None.
Wow, they left it up to you, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah.
That probably
They're
explains the entrepreneurial spirit you've got. Like your parents weren't the ones filling out your applications, kind of a
oh
thing.
no, far from it.
Yeah.
They give me advice and suggestions, but they're like, it's your life to live, and we'll give you the resources you need to make it happen, but we're not going to hold your hand, and we're not going to do it for you or tell you what to do. And unfortunately, I got in on the second go. It was going to be cutting it close. I had a little bit too much fun in high school, so my grades were not stellar. Ironically, or not so ironically, my grades at the academy were not so great either. School academics is not really my thing, especially when you're a teenage / early 20-year-old boy wanting to be a SEAL. Academics was something you had to do to get to this other thing. I've never enjoyed sitting in a classroom having to focus on these things that honestly 95% of the stuff I've learned in school I don't use.
I mean, looking at your background, though, you go to grad school twice, I think.
I have a master's through Webster University, which was a cool program I got put through USAPAC, so U.S. Army Pacific. So that was a great deal. And I'm actually going to get my MBA now. Yeah, I genuinely enjoyed the international relations stuff. And I was still a SEAL at the time. I was stationed in South Korea. I went over there beginning of 2017. It's like literally weeks before KJU started launching all the missiles, and everybody shifted their focus over to Korea. They're like, what is going on? We haven't paid attention to this since like the 80s, basically. And so we had all the 3-letter agencies showing up. I was one of 3 permanently assigned SEALs on the peninsula. And I was working very closely with the Korean SEALs, with SOCOR, Special Operations Command Korea. And it was a really cool experience for me to have all these assets and all these people coming over, asking for my support, asking for connections, having me explain the war plan. Should we go to war with Korea? We were in the middle of actually updating it at the time. And so it was an interesting experience going through all that, and then also getting my master's in international relations, being able to talk about a lot of these topics. And so going from, high school English, where you're analyzing the book Beloved from an author that died 100 years or whatever before I was ever born, the English teacher's telling you to write a 5-page essay on this book that I'm sure was a great book with meaningful intentions, but as a 17-year-old, I don't care about that type of stuff. Like, English should be trying to get kids to just read. Like, I don't care if you're reading Harry Potter. I don't care if you're reading graphic novels. Like, just read and learn to enjoy reading. Up until about like 7 years ago, I hated reading because I had such a bad taste in my mouth from high school and college reading the books that they forced on you, that I never developed a joy of just reading for the sake of reading. And now I absolutely love it. But it was honestly going through the master's program really helped. It's like, reading topics and talking about topics you enjoy changes everything.
My youngest son is 11, and he has never been a big reader. He's a little bit slower developing than my other 2 sons. But man, like, I couldn't get him to read anything like Harry Potter, none of those books. Percy Jackson, and his brothers loved him. He will tear through any World War I book. Like, he loves them. So I'm having to find these different, I never read those. Like, I was pretty big into World War II. I don't know many people who are into World War I. He just loves it. He can name all kinds of equipment, tanks, airplanes, people, battles. But you're right. Like, if I was just trying to shove Harry Potter down his face, he wouldn't read it all. There's something to that.
If he wants a cool book, it's not World War I, it's World War II, but Rogue Heroes. It's about the formation of the SAS. Like, if you just want to hear the stuff that these guys went through, like literally walking 100 miles through the desert after getting stranded on an operation, like the North African desert, they literally walked back
100 miles.
They went to drop in. They jumped out of an airplane. Remember, World War II is like the beginning of parachutes. So that parachute operations didn't really exist in terms of having standard procedures. They jumped into a sandstorm. Everybody got scattered and thrown all over the place. And the guys, some of the ones that survived, walked back 100 miles across the desert back to base and just showed up like 2 weeks later.
I love it.
The stuff that happened back then was insane.
So I've noticed on social media these days, maybe it's the time of year, that they've got this tradition, I guess, with the students trying to like climb up each other on.
Oh, Climbing Herndon?
Yes. Did you participate in this?
I actually didn't. So I had,
What's the story behind this?
Climbing Herndon is a obelisk looking monument. Think of a much smaller version of the Washington Monument. This thing's, I don't know, 30 feet tall. So it's not small, but it's not the Washington Monument either. And the tradition is during grad week, all year long, the freshmen called plebes, they have to chomp around. It's basically like running around with high knees everywhere inside the barracks. And, you have much less, let's call it rights or privileges as a freshman than you do any other grade. And so the tradition is once the class climbs Herndon and replaces the Dixie Cup, so the things like the enlisted Navy sailor cover, replace that with the combo cover, so the traditional naval officer cover. Replace that one cover with the other, and then get back down. You're no longer a freshman, and you can enjoy the privileges that the other upperclassmen have. The trick, though, or the main obstacle, is they grease up the entire obelisk in lard. It is like an inch thick in this lard, and they're spraying you with hoses, and you're trying to make a human pyramid to get to the top of it. I actually wasn't there for that because during the summers you do, they call them summer tours. And so there's different things. Like I went on an aircraft carrier and traveled around, got to see what carrier life was like. You go around on the YPs, which are like the mini naval ships that they use for maritime training, all about the navigation and learning seamanship while out during your summers. I did a SEAL tour. Some people do tours with the Marines. There's all kinds of different things that you have every year. And my first year, I had one that started before the end of grad week. So I wasn't there. Kind of missed it, but at the same time, I don't need to be rubbing up against a greased up marble pillar.
And other people.
And other people, the entire class.
Oh gosh, it is gross looking. We'll try to have an image on the screen so people can see it.
Yeah.
How about this decision as you're getting out of the academy, though? As you mentioned, you were looking to do the SEAL thing, very competitive year, and you end up going in the Marines. How are you feeling about that at that time? I know maybe it's a letdown, or maybe it's I'll embrace this opportunity.
When I found out, so they call it service selection night, it's right before Thanksgiving, your senior year. So you have like a semester and a half left at the academy. I thought I had a very, very good chance of getting SEALs. I put in a lot of effort. I'd done a SEAL summer tour. I went to dive school and got certified as a Navy diver, or not the like deep sea hard hat diver, but the Navy scuba diver qual. I was middle of the class. I wasn't tanking. I wasn't at like the very tail end. I was middle of the pack someplace, and I'd done a bunch of other things, and so I thought I was fairly competitive. And so when I didn't get it, it was a bit of a shock, especially because I got selected for Marine Corps, which hindsight was a great, phenomenal opportunity for me. It opened up a lot of stuff. It was much better than sitting on a ship for 2, 3, 4 years before transitioning to BUDs. But at the time, I literally had zero experience with the Marines. And full disclosure, Marines on the Naval Academy a lot of times have a very bad reputation. They're considered like the uber motivated rule follower, very strict, not fun type people. A lot of the time they call them Joes, the people that follow the rules strictly, and they walk around with the high end tights. You're just like, I don't want to be like those people. Fortunately, my company commander, he was a major at the time, and he was probably the coolest Marine I'd ever met up to that point. He had been a rugby player. He didn't follow that false bravado, super loud, boisterous Marine type person. He was very calm, cool, collected, talked to you like a normal person, was super helpful. And so I had him as someone I could talk to after I got selected for Marines to talk about the situation of like what you're actually getting into. And so at first I was, caught off guard. I was a bit of shock of going to this community that I knew nothing about. I didn't do any of the summer tours that involved the Marines. My impression up until that point had been somewhat negative. But I'm not gonna say negative. They weren't bad people. It was just they weren't my people. And I had always associated myself with special operations and being the cool guy. And it was honestly a very good thing to go separate myself from that, because I had this idea of what I could be. And I probably would have gone over there thinking I was a cool guy and just had a terrible mentality in relation to other services and other people. So getting Marines and working with this force who, honestly, I tell people all the time, I love being a SEAL more than being a Marine, but I love being a Marine far more than being in the Navy. Like the Marine Corps as a whole is a phenomenal organization. Everything revolves around serving that 19-year-old Lance Corporal rifleman that's on the ground getting dirty, whether you're a helicopter pilot, you're an F-18 pilot, you're a tank driver, you're a supply person. Like every single one of them is focused on that one rifleman. Where the Navy, it's completely scattered. You have the ship people, you have the aircraft people, you have the SEALs, you have the submarines, and every one of them is a completely disaggregated force that only talks to each other when they have to. And so seeing how an organization as large as the Marine Corps operates so effectively and has so much camaraderie, like I don't know how it was in the Army, but in the Navy, the Navy birthday, October 13th, it's like, oh yeah, that is today, isn't it? And then you just like move on with your day. The Marine Corps, it's like weeks of lead up of this is going to be such a good party. We're going to have a great time. Here's the event. We're going to Vegas. We have this casino sponsoring the birthday ball. You get it dressed up in your nice uniform. And it's just a great time. And every Marine across the globe is celebrating it together. And it's the epitome of what the Marine Corps is in a single day.
I mean, some of the stories that I've heard from guys on this show, and then even, living in embassies overseas, there's always the Marine detachment there. So there's that Marine presence, and then there's a Marine Corps house typically. And then you've got the Marine Corps ball, which is a big event for the American community. But hearing about the traditions of like the oldest and youngest Marine in the room, cutting the cake, one of the guys we had on was like, we practiced a lot, but, a recon guy who went to Delta, and he was like, we practiced a lot, but man, that guy who has to cut the cake on the Marine Corps birthday, nobody practices as much as him. And then even for Fallujah, like handing out MRE pound cake or something to just symbolize what was going on with that day. Nobody does that like the Marine. So I was imagining you saying that there was something special about your time in the Marine Corps, even if it wasn't what you were hoping to begin with.
Yeah, like my time going through TBS and Marine Corps tradition, very complicated acronyms, the basic school, where all Marine officers go through to learn how to be provisional riflemen. Through that, be provisional rifle platoon commanders. Through that, at the end of you get another service selection. So Naval Academy service selection, I got picked Marines. It wasn't like the Navy side where you get ships or pilot or submarines. You just pick Marine ground. And then you go to TBS, and that's where you actually get selected for your particular MOS within the Marine Corps. I got chosen for one that I wasn't super excited about. I got comms. But through that, I met some of the coolest people. One of my best friends is a Chief Warrant Officer 5. He's had the most ridiculous career. He's a wireman. So think of literally running wires around, connecting telephones and stuff like that. But he's served with ODAs as a comm guy. He went out on security patrols. He did more as a non-comm person than he ever did as a communication Marine. And now he's over at the Pentagon serving as a warrant officer. And this guy looks like Shrek. He is let's call it a not polished person. And so I laugh every day he tells me about what he has to deal with at the Pentagon, being as rough and
Outspoken, maybe.
outspoken as he is. He doesn't care. My first interaction with him, honestly, this is a great story. He joined our battalion when we were heading out to the field, and he was a MCMAP instructor. He was an instructor trainer. He was a black belt. He was, I think, like a second or third degree black belt. So he was actually designing a lot of the curriculum for the Marine Corps martial art program. He'd been a amateur fighter for a while, did some kickboxing, some MMA stuff. He took it very seriously. He actually put me through the instructor course as well. He meets the battalion commander, who's wearing a black belt at the time, and he's like, "Oh, ma'am, I didn't know you were a black belt." She's like, "Oh, I'm not." He's like, "But you're wearing it." And her response is, "Oh, it's more comfortable." He's like, "Oh yeah, like wearing medals you didn't earn," and just walks away. And I'm just seeing him. He's a brand new warrant officer, so warrant officer one, not even a chief warrant officer at this point. And I just hear him drop this remark and walk away. I'm just like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" Then that's the type of person he is. So imagine him now at the Pentagon dealing with people.
What would you say about the difference in leadership, maybe training or development between the Marine Corps and the Navy, having seen both of those pretty close up?
So I can only talk to what the SEAL community has done, because again, we really don't have a whole lot of interaction outside of our small footprint. The Marine Corps takes it very seriously. You have the scheduled courses as you promote through. They are constantly doing battalion events. We'll have the officer wardroom meet up. We'll do a discussion on these things. Everything is about leadership and training you to be a leader of Marines. And while I don't think every Marine is actually a rifleman, some people couldn't hit the broadside of the barn. They at least know how to operate the rifle effectively. And if need be, they can put rounds down range. So it's very similar with the officer side. Is every Marine officer is expected to be a provisional rifle platoon commander, meaning if need be, you could lead an element of Marines in combat with some level of competency. And so they really hone in on the combat nature of what Marines do, instead of just getting so fixated on your comms or your supply or your logistics, and just kind of stay in your lane. Let the combat arms people worry about that stuff. And so I've always been impressed with the level of attention to leadership development, and honestly, just career development that the Marine Corps did to make you a better, more rounded person. The SEAL community we did is a lot more job specific focus, not so much leadership. It's like, all right, this is how to be a GFC, a ground forces commander, to work with aircraft and to work with higher command and to work with friendly elements in the area. It's very job focused. They just kind of expect you to have leadership presence by the time you've made it to that level.
One of the things I've noticed just being around the Marines that I have had the opportunity to meet, they seem to be, I don't know if it's training, if it's some of the discipline, if it's something in the water, but they seem to be very adept at making tough decisions being like unpopular decisions that are hard for a leader to make because you're going to piss off some people. Mm-hmm. I don't think the Army does a great job there. For whatever reason, the people I met at the agency who are former Marines or even in business, they seem to be fairly good at that. I'm just curious, it might just be what I've seen, but did you notice anything like that having gone to the two services?
Yeah, I mean, the Marine Corps is very good at, I guess, conditioning people to not necessarily care about hurting people's feelings. That's why they can come off very, very rough and unfriendly. They know what's right and they beat that into you, not physically, well, sometimes, but they drive that into you. Make the right decision. They talk about character all the time, the qualities of a leadership. what makes a sound leader. JJ did tie buckle was the acronym they teach you during TBS, and I could probably go through all 13. I think it's
I've
13
never heard this.
characters. Yeah, JJ did tie buckle. It's like judicious. I'm
going to pull it up real quick. Hold up.
I'm going to get shit on by all my Marine friends for not remembering this, but it's an acronym of all the different characteristics of what makes a good leader. They're also very comfortable making decisions without having the full picture. And the expression that they always say is be comfortable making decisions with 70% of the information, because you're never going to have all the information. Yeah. So rely on your gut, rely on what you have, and just minimize risk throughout the process.
There might be something as well with the way you started this off, talking about everybody is supporting that 19-year-old rifleman. I guess if that's everybody's grounding point, and you can argue, hey, what we're about to go do is going to suck, but it's going to help in this regard, it might get rid of a lot of the other potential options that you have and make it easier to come. So I looked up what this is. I've never heard. JJ did tie buckle. So justice, judgment, dependability, initiative, decisiveness, tact, integrity, enthusiasm, bearing, unselfishness, courage, knowledge, loyalty, endurance. Interesting. So this is kind of like beaten into you throughout the training process.
TBS, yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, they'll be proud that I still remember the acronym and what it's for. I just put it on the spot. I got justice. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the first ones.
I was able to look it up, man. It was good. All right.
It is a very common piece of knowledge within the Marine Corps.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so you get into the Marine Corps, you spend 4 years there. It sounds like you always have this vision of going into special operations. And the time you joined, MARSOC, I think, has just been stood up. Is that right?
Yeah, I think MARSOC stood up in 2005. I joined the Marine Corps in 2008. But they hadn't opened it up to all MOSs. So you had to be a combat arms. Well, originally they pulled over the Force Recon guys and made it into a SOCOM element. So Force Recon is owned by the Marine Corps. Rumsfeld came in and was like, we need to expand our special operations capability. Quickest and easiest way is to just pull the Marine special operations guys under SOCOM. The Marine Corps does not like that. We are very protective about our own. They don't like giving up any control. That's why they have things like Harriers and helicopters, because they don't have to task them off to other services. The Harriers have they don't really use the Harriers anymore, but at the time they didn't have a long enough dwell time. So the Marine Corps was like, we can't hand them off to you guys because they can't just fly around. We'll just hold them at these FARPs, the forward arming and refueling points, and then we'll task them out as needed. So don't worry, Air Force, Navy, we'll handle our own stuff. Same thing with their special operations stuff. So the Force Recon guys, they pulled over under SOCOM, and they were, I think they were MARSOC immediately. They might have had a different name. But they brought them over, and now they're part of special operations. And it was only a funnel of basically infantry, artillery, tanks, and a couple other select MOSs that were in the combat arms area. It wasn't eligible for everyone else. But then 2009, I think they opened it up to all MOSs because they were needing to expand their numbers. So now if you were a comm guy, logistics guy, supply guy, and you wanted to go through the screener, you could, which is great because I'm not eligible. Downside is everybody in the Marine Corps who had a wild hair and become a MARSOC guy was now applying. So it was a 1.5 year wait list just to go to ANS, assessment and selection. And ANS isn't BUDS. ANS is like pre-BUDS. Are you good enough to go through I think they base it a lot of the Q course for SF. So you did this ANS block, I think it was a week or two. If you got the thumbs up, then you can get orders to the actual MARSOC trainer course. It was a 1.5 years just to go to ANS. And so I was like, I'll put my name in, but my timeline, I'd like to have a little faster. So I applied to inter-service transfer to the Navy for SEALs. Got denied the first time, got picked up the second time while my package was still waiting for MARSOC. I honestly would have been perfectly happy going either route, I think. But it's just I'm going to look out for my career ultimately because I want to get someplace where I feel like I'm able to contribute the most and have the most meaningful career. And so, I transferred, which it was a painful process switching over from the Marine Corps even to the Navy. Like, we're still Department of the Navy. It took 8 months from when I got the letter saying I've been accepted to when I actually left the Marine Corps and swore into the Navy.
From your time in the Marine Corps, are there one or two moments where you feel like were really pivotal learning lessons, kind of leadership lessons maybe, or something that you really took away from those 4 years?
I really enjoyed the overall in-depth nature of mission planning. I talked to a lot of guys that switched to BUDs from surface warfare to being on a ship, and they basically got zero applicable training other than here's how you fill out fit reps, and this is how you do travel vouchers and stuff like that. Everything they learned on a ship was essentially not applicable, so they had like avoided 2 years or whatever it took them to transfer over. With the Marine Corps, everything is about the 5-paragraph order and mission planning and executing on these things, and doing that constantly every day, basically for 4 years, was a huge advantage when I showed up to training. After first phase, Hell Week, it's not going to help you at all. There's no 5-paragraph order during Hell Week, but when you actually get to SQT and the SEAL teams, and you're doing mission planning and developing these op boards, it was a huge asset to have been doing that for so long with a force that is very detail oriented. And so having that experience was absolutely pivotal. In terms of mindset, though, I knew what I didn't want to go back to. So my first deployment, as a Marine, I had, for like the first 2 months, I was put on systems control watch, SysCon watch, literally sitting in not a cubicle, in a container with a bunch of screens showing the network status.
No.
So there's a bunch of blinking lights looking at like the satellite communication status and the SIPR and NIPR network statuses. And so when I was going through BUDs, I'm like, there is no way I am ever going to go be in a job where that is my role. Like, I don't care how badly this hurts. I don't care what I'm going through. I know what is waiting for me if I don't make it through this training. And so it's not even a question in my mind of maybe I should just quit, get that warm cup of coffee, a warm shower, and try something else. Like, I know what is waiting for me if I quit. And so it was never an option on the table, because I got to see firsthand how unfulfilled I was in a certain field, in a certain role, which brings me to a good point that I tell veterans all the time. In the military, you got to suck it up. That's going to be your role for the next 2 to 3 years. When you leave, there is no shame and there is no qualms with leaving a job. If it's not a good fit for you, there's no amount of pride that should keep you in that role just because this is the job you took. So you should see it through and be the best at it just because you said you'd do it. Like, the civilian career is not your military career. You should be finding things that excite you and give you meaning and purpose. Otherwise, you're just gonna be languishing, and you're not helping that company either, because you're not gonna be excited to be there.
I mean, certainly going through BUDs, you said there's no 5-paragraph op orders during BUDs, which I get, but I have to imagine if there's anything that could prepare you for Hell Week or BUDs, presumably it would be spending 4 years in the Marines, as opposed to like being surface warfare or coming right off the street. Like, I would imagine there's some benefit there, certainly with the mentality that you just had of like, I'm not coming out of this place to go back to that. What advice do you give? I'm sure you get asked all the time. What advice do you give to guys to get through BUDs, or your co-host who we haven't mentioned yet, but from the Green Beret side, what are you telling people, these young kids who want to get into special ops?
Can I cuss?
Hell yeah.
Don't be a pussy. Like, it's literally what it comes down to. That's part of the reason why we named the podcast Harder, Not Smarter, is there are certain things in life There is no life hack. There is no easy button shortcut to get through. There is no shortcut through BUDS. There is no shortcut through the Q course. You have to show up. You have to put in the effort. Yes, there are ways you can be smarter about it, and you learn to game the game a little bit. But at the end of the day, Hell Week is 110 hours. You're going to be up for 110 hours running around with that stupid boat on your head, doing log PT, wet, cold, sandy, tired. You're not hungry too often. I will say that about BUDS. They feed you 4 meals a day plus snacks, and it's like, we're going to take away everything else you can possibly have as a creature comfort, but we'll make sure you're fed, because at some point your body would just fail. But yeah, go into it not analyzing each individual evolution, and instead focus on the long run. Don't look at it being 6 months. Don't psych yourself out being like, oh my God, I have to do this for 6 months. For me, it was, I know BUDS is not what being a SEAL is. It's not like SEALs are just out there thrashing themselves in the surf zone every day. This is simply a evolution you have to go through to prove that you're worthy of their time to train, that you're not going to let your teammates down when it gets rough. And so if you go into it with that mindset of, I'm proving to them that I belong here, and this is going to be something that'll eventually end. Yes, there are times in training that you're significantly colder, more tired, hungrier, whatever the case might be. There'll be moments of that in training. And so you always need to have that mentality of always earning the right to be there. But at the same time, know that BUDS is not what being a SEAL is. And so just put out, show them that you belong there, and focus on completing that evolution, one evolution after another. It's a long haul.
When you make it through the training, it can be Hell Week, it could be the remainder of the training, but do you come out of that feeling different at all? Or is it somewhat of a letdown? Like, I don't feel any different, but now I've got this trident on my chest.
It's a slow progression. You get your brown t-shirt after you finish Hell Week. It's your first reset point, I guess you can say. So if you get a little bit farther in training and you get rolled back, you don't get rolled back to day one, you get rolled back post Hell Week. So having that brown t-shirt is a huge thing. It's that cheap $2 shitty government issued brown t-shirt, but yep, it's got your name stenciled on it and it has all the meaning in the world to you. And what it really signifies is you were able to put yourself way outside your comfort zone, and it gives you that perspective shift of all these other things I've done in life have prepared me for Hell Week, and now Hell Week prepares me for all the things I'm going to move forward with in the future with the SEAL teams. You know that you can push yourself a lot farther than you expected over the 110 hours. So Sunday night until Friday morning is the period that the training goes from. You get maybe 2 to 3 hours of sleep. There's 2, I'm going to say, naps you can get, and it's sleeping on a cot on the beach and you're soaking wet. It's not comfortable. But yeah, it's Wednesday afternoon and Thursday afternoon. You get maybe an hour and a half set aside to it. A lot of people don't fall asleep though, because you're so amped up, you're nervous. The instructors are right outside. Some people are nervous that if they fall asleep, they'll feel too groggy when they have to get up again, and they won't be able to keep going forward. So a lot of people don't even take a nap, but you have 2 hours to 3 hours allotted to getting some sleep during all of Hell Week. But by and large, you're going 110 hours without really sleeping. You're cold the whole time, you're wet the whole time, you're sandy the whole time, and you're just broken down. People's thighs are chafed up, looking like ground beef. Guys literally have, I'm going to say it, socks on, because their dicks are so chafed from the sand. It's just painful to have anything touch it. So they put like an ace bandage type wrap around it to try and help it a little bit. It doesn't do much. I mean, it's going to get wet and sandy again anyway. But guys have these rashes up and down their arms. Their feet are so swollen they actually need to get a different boot size. It is atrocious on the body. So making it out on the back end of that, you're like, okay, I did that. I did something really, really, really hard. What else can I accomplish? And so it gives you that perspective change of, if I could do this, what else can I do? And so it really helps as you're going on through life when you hit struggling moments. I had to deal with a lawsuit, dealing with the stress of that, dealing with financial issues. The first day you realize you no longer have a government paycheck coming in, and you're entirely reliant on your business bringing in an income. That's a stressful moment. Building out your business, having clients leave you, having clients not pay you, having employees quit, all kinds of things induce stress. And whether it's running under a boat across 10 miles of sand or dealing with a lawsuit, stress is stress is stress. Well, it doesn't matter what's actually going on. It's your body's reaction to it. And so having the awareness to recognize a stress response, working through how to calm yourself down, breathing drills, looking for solutions instead of just panicking, being like, okay, this is where I am. Let me come up with 3 solutions. How can I move forward with these? And constantly having that mindset of work through problems instead of letting the problems absorb them. It makes you infinitely more successful as an entrepreneur, and just life in general, when you have that as your mindset instead of being a victim.
You said, I think at the beginning, you went through Hell Week twice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you knew what was coming the second time, presumably.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I have had somebody on here, I think went through 5 times, which just sounds horrendous.
There was one guy I knew, Mike Sullivan. Last time was Sullivan. He went through so many times. He
finally made it.
He ended up in my first platoon. He ended up as a first platooner in my second platoon. Like, that's how long it took him to get there. So that's a full 2 years later. And his first Hell Week was before I ever got to BUD/S.
How tough was it for you to mentally get back into the mindset for the second time around?
It was rough. So I got rolled out Wednesday night. I think it was Wednesday night of Hell Week to swimmer-induced pulmonary edema. Pulmonary edema, you get fluid in your lungs, all kinds of different ones. HAPE or HAP, whatever you want to call it, high altitude pulmonary edema is a common one people hear of when Everest climbers are up above a certain altitude for too long. Your body does weird physiological stuff and literally starts putting fluid into your lungs. Seiff is a very similar thing, except it's not from altitude. They don't really know what causes it. They think it has some combination of the cold, being in the moisture, being in the water, being exhausted, stress, and a whole bunch of other things. You typically get it in the winter when it's colder. I got it in July, so I was just an anomaly. But basically, your body starts pushing fluid from your capillaries back into your lungs. And so it's this pink, frothy fluid. It's not blood, but it kind of looks like blood. Push it into your lungs, and you're essentially slowly drowning as your lungs fill up more and more. I've seen guys have blood oxygen saturations as low as 60%. So normally you're like 98 to 100%. Anything below 98%, you'll start feeling it. I was dropping down into the 80s when they first noticed it. But yeah, you can actually die from it if it goes untreated. So it's a very serious thing. But it's not like blowing out a knee or something like that, where it's going to be months and months to recover. I got rolled out on Wednesday. I was in the next BUD/S class on Monday. I was like, I'm not sitting around. I'm not going to heal up. I either went in on Monday or I waited 2 more months for the next class. I'm like, I'm not sitting around to do this. So I went through 7 weeks, because it's 4 weeks of, it's 3 weeks of BUD/S orientation, 3 weeks of first phase, and then the 4th week of first phase is Hell Week. So I did 7 weeks and then restarted on day 1 from the beginning. The advantage I had now, though, was I had just gone through all of this. I knew all the instructors. I know their personalities. I know what happens. BUD/S seems like absolute chaos from the outside, but once you're in it, there's set schedules. Like, from this time to this time, you're doing a 4-mile timed run. From this time to this time, you're at breakfast. This time to this time, you're in classroom. This time you're doing the O course. Like you have the schedule ahead of time. You know what's coming. For the most part, there's a couple random pop-up things that they'll get you with, but it's scheduled evolution. And so knowing what those are like, I know what the 4 mile run course is across the beach. I know I've done 2 mile ocean swims repeatedly. I know that course and how to guide better. I've done the O course multiple times at that point. And so you feel comfortable and you feel confident going into it because a lot of the mystery is removed from what's going on in BUD/S. And so you can go in there significantly more confident. And now you can help other people get through too, because you can talk to them about, hey, this is what to expect. This is what's going to be happening. These are things you should focus your effort on. These, like, you're probably going to fail this evolution no matter what, because they're just going to make you fail and they want to see what you're going to act like. So don't waste your time necessarily doing this stuff too much. I can help people on the O course. I can help people with techniques on running. And so now not only am I helping myself through, but I'm value added to the class. And so that gives me renewed purpose, and I have importance, and I have something beyond just making it through myself. I'm trying to get the entire class through, or as many people as possible.
When you get to your first platoon, are you moving right into command at that point? Or are you waiting for a year and shadowing?
We have AOICs. The SEAL platoons are a weird military structure. Like in the Marine Corps, at one point I had 80 Marines as a platoon commander. And so I was the only officer. I had a staff sergeant, and then 79 other Marines working for me. I think I had 20 sergeants. So it's just a massive group. The SEAL platoon, my first platoon, we had 24. They're going through a bunch of shifts in organizational structure. So my first one, we had 24, which is on the larger side. But we had 4 officers because the SEAL community got too good, legitimately too good at picking SEAL officer candidates. And they had a huge flood of them making it through training. And so there's just too many of them, and only so many. Each SEAL team had, I think, 7 SEAL platoons. So each of those have 1 OIC, and then all the other officers kind of fall in behind it. I have no authority other than just being an officer in general, but like I had no actual authority over the platoon. I'm there to learn from the OIC and prepare myself for down the road when I would take over my own platoon. So we had 24 people, 24 SEALs in that platoon, 4 of which were officers. 3 of us were full lieutenants, so O3s. One of them was an O2. So a JG by the time he got to the platoon. And so like in any organization, 4 officers, 3 which were full O3s in the same unit is just ridiculous, but that's just how the SEAL community has to work, because there's no other place for you to get training. Like in the Army, you can get experience in an actual conventional rifle platoon, and then you can come over to Rangers, or you can come over to Green Berets. There's something outside of that community where you can get combat experience and command experience. The Navy doesn't have anything, so we just have to condense it all into one unit, and we train ourselves.
This is 2012, right? It's coming off of the Bin Laden raid. Are things riding pretty high at the time?
Yeah. There had been a lot of attention on naval special warfare at that point. Mike Murphy had already been killed. The book Lone Survivor had already come out. By the time I got to the teams, American Sniper had already been a book. And so there's a lot of publicity of stuff going on. Plus, within the Navy, so before, you probably saw stuff like you see someone's rank, it would say something similar to Petty Officer First Class Mike Jones, and then it would say in parentheses SEAL, where the SEAL, or they didn't have MOSs in the Navy, NECs, Naval Enlistment Codes. They didn't have a SEAL NEC. It wasn't an A school. It wasn't a primary school. So you went off and became a corpsman or a torpedo man or a radar man or something like that on the enlisted side. The officer side is different. So there wasn't a specific A school you went to have it as your primary job. BUD/S was a secondary volunteer thing. Around 2008, for a variety of reasons, and it's probably more boring than what's worth talking about here, they professionalized the force and created the SEAL job. You have SO. So now you have like SO1, SO2, SO3 for petty officer, first, second, and third class. But when they shifted it under its own A school, now Big Navy has oversight over BUDs. And so now there's a whole lot more scrutiny in terms of, what's going into the curriculum at BUDs. Is it too hard? Is it, what is the point of all these different things? And when you're still seeing that stuff today with, the guy that just died a couple of years ago, all the scrutiny came down of why are we doing things this way? Is this important? Are we not giving the right oversight? The reality is we've lost less SEAL candidates in training than, any pilot program. We lose pilots all the time to training accidents. But because of the amount of notoriety the SEAL community had, there's all kinds of scrutiny coming down. So it was good and bad in terms of professionalizing the force, but it came with a lot of secondary and third order effects.
So when you get there, what do you end up doing if you're kind of waiting in the wings effectively as an AOIC? Yeah.
So you're a full member of the platoon. You're assigned to squad, and you go through the entire workup. You're essentially a extra shooter. Nice. And ready to take over command should the OIC go down. So I was, if there was an actual nomenclature to it, I was the first AOIC. I was the senior of the three other officers. And so if anything happened to my OIC, I would have been the next in line to take over. So my job was largely to learn from him so that if he ever went down or we had to operate independently, which actually happened on our deployment, we got split up. We were supposed to go to Yemen, but 2 weeks before we went out there was when we pulled everyone out, like State Department, everybody left in the middle of the night. I actually talked to some guys from Team 5 who are the ones stationed there. They literally got onto a C-17 in the middle of the night and left, including all of their gear. They put all their gears into, ISO containers, those 9 foot by 9 foot containers. And then the next day they dropped a JDAM on it. Like all their personal gear, their laptops, all that stuff like that. And the Navy did not reimburse them. He's like, we got screwed because they had to get everything out in one period of darkness, and they couldn't fit all their gear because it's like a full C-17 to get everybody out there over iterations to the personal gear, their team gear, all the breaching stuff, the maritime equipment, boats and motors. God. And so they put all their personal gear into an ISO container, and then it got a 500-pound JDAM dropped onto it.
Oh,
I think they got to watch the video of it after.
You get a lot of stuff that you just accumulate or buy for deployments. It's expensive.
All those cry camis, gone.
Dang.
But yeah, so to get to the point, we were supposed to go to Yemen because they closed down. Our platoon got split into two elements to two different locations as they're retasking us. And so I actually took half the platoon for the entire deployment. But yeah, you're basically, as a AOIC, you're learning the ropes, you're learning how to be a SEAL while also learning to do stuff like managing air assets and giving op boards and managing your team and working with higher headquarters. It's very much very much learning through a fire hose. You're just trying to absorb as much information as quickly as you can.
So similar to what you kind of described as the strengths of leadership training in the Marine Corps, what are some of the key takeaways that you kind of bring into the civilian world from the SEALs?
It's a good question. Honestly, it really comes down to learning to do as much as possible with as little manpower and equipment as possible. That the story goes that the SEALs get all kinds of stuff they can ever imagine, but ultimately you're a very small element with limited actual assets. Oftentimes we didn't have our own vehicles, or we don't have our own air assets. We oftentimes don't have our own base. We're operating off somebody else's base and somebody else's AO. You're there to support other entities, and so you're kind of working, beg, borrowing, stealing constantly to get enough stuff. And I also learned that from the Marine Corps. You're never going to have all the stuff you want. You're never going to have all the air assets. You're never going to have all of the QRFs or the supporting elements and stuff. So you have to make do with what you have. And in entrepreneurship, that's exactly what every day is. you're never going to have enough money. You're never going to have enough time. You're never going to have enough people. You're never going to have enough customers. You're always trying to work with what you have and make it as good as possible. And you just have to be okay with it never being perfect. And I think that's really helped me frame my perspective of building this business. And you're always trying to, you see the team 6 guys and all the assets they have, and how well they are able to operate, and how smoothly they operate, how quickly they can give orders, and how deep, or given up board, and how quickly they can mission plan, and how smooth they go through the kill house. Like, that's what I want to be. I'm not there yet, but I'm going to keep working for that. And even on a smaller scale within the platoon, those guys that have done 3, 4, 5 platoons, you see how they conduct themselves, how they wear their gear, how they flow through the house, how they communicate with one another. You're like, okay, that's an example I want to follow. I'm going to get there. I'm not there yet, but I'm okay with that, knowing that I'll keep working towards improving myself.
Some people might have an ego that doesn't let them have that perspective that you're kind of talking about, where it's like, I don't want to look at these other people who are so good because it might make me feel like I'm not as good. There's something with SEALs, I guess, speaking to a bunch of you, it just seems like you don't have that ego holding you back. It's, hey, who's doing it really well, and how can I emulate that?
I think there's ego in stages. Like, to yourself, you can be proud of what you've done, and especially amongst your friends, you can have that competitive nature of, you have that sibling rivalry, that good banter of ridiculing each other, trying to get them to improve, and seeing the things you've done well. But on a outward projection, you try to be humble and acknowledge that there's constantly growth to be had, but also acknowledge that there are better people out there, and to not rest on your laurels, that you can always try to improve and better yourself.
What are some of the more impactful moments from your time in the teams that you still think back on, or that were big learning opportunities for you?
I feel like every day was a learning opportunity, with setbacks and failures, and it just realizations that maybe things aren't going to go the way you wanted. What you were alluding to with chasing the dragon. I joined the Marine Corps and the SEAL teams, and immediately people are going to say, man, those are the 2 elements you're going to want to get to if you want to get in the fight. And ironically, I never got into the fight. It's just how things played out with my deployments in the Marine Corps, and then again my deployments within the SEAL teams. I mentioned I was supposed to go to Yemen. It wasn't the most kinetic thing that was going on, but it just became a very unstable situation. But it would have been significantly more combat oriented than what we ended up doing. My section got sent to the crisis response element, which is basically the CENTCOM commander's special operations QRF, to go react in action certain things. But the motto, the unofficial motto of the Cree was freak out and spin up. We never actually did it. Never. There's a handful of operations over the life of the Cree that actually got executed on. But it was a lot of, all right, we see this Dow leaving Iran that's headed towards Yemen or something like that, and we think there might be weapons on there. So let's start mission planning to how we're going to go take down this Dow. And
what's a Dow?
A Dow is the traditional Middle Eastern ships. They're you probably heard about the 2 SEALs that died recently. That was a Dow that they were getting on. So 30, 40, 50 feet. They're not huge boats, but they're the transportation stuff that just pops around. Like there's thousands of them all over. They blend in very well, and so it comes down to a lot of, is there a cell phone or something we're tracking, or we're getting intel that there's stuff on there. And so the Cree will go into this mission planning cycle of, all right, let's get all the details of this Dow. Where's it going to be? How are we going to interdict it? Where would we interdict it? Where's it headed to? And then you go through all this training or this rehearsal stuff, and then it just doesn't happen. And then that just repeats every couple of weeks. Oh, another mission might be coming in, and then it dies. And then another mission, and then it dies. And so that it's frustrating, because you hear about guys that are in Afghanistan and Iraq that are doing operations. Um, and you're not. And so it's one of those things that it took me a long time after the service. Like I almost went to the FBI to go through the HRT
Yeah.
program because I wanted to get back out there and test my mettle. I'd gone through all these training cycles to be a SEAL and all this stuff to be a Marine, and never actually got in on game day. So like, all right, do I try to go HRT or ground branch with CIA to try and do stuff that is more in line with what I originally wanted to do? And it came down to, it was a different phase of my life. By the time I finally got out, I'd done 12 years. The wars had drastically shifted from 2008 until 2020. There wasn't Afghanistan anymore, really. We had some presence there. Obviously, we pulled out a little later, but there wasn't a whole lot going on. It was more of a holding pattern. Iraq had been largely closed out. It wasn't the 2005 Ramadi type deployments anymore. And so I decided to do a complete separation. I didn't go in the reserves. I didn't go join HRT or some other element that I realized probably would have been a second tier in my mind. And I would have, it's not a good mindset to be going into.
Yes.
Like I would have rather been a SEAL, but this is my next option. So I'll do that. And decided to give my hand at just being a normal civilian, having a job, enjoying life, living by the beach. I just got married a couple years before, so spend time with my wife, start a family, and enjoy what I got out of being in the military, and not become so focused on what I didn't do in the military.
What are some, I guess, transitioning just back to what you're doing now on that note with the Vet Collective and trying to help folks, what are some of the recurring challenges that you hear from folks in that space that they're trying to overcome and battle?
Yeah, honestly, the most unexpected aspect of all this, as you mentioned, I came into this, I want to teach entrepreneurship to veterans so that they can have purpose again in their life. I did not expect the psychological, the mental health aspect that was going to become so prevalent in it. I see it all the time on our community, people talking about how important it is and how meaningful it's been joining this community. Not necessarily because of the entrepreneurship stuff, that's great. We're glad to be getting that, but having a community of veterans that they can open up to. We've had so many guys talk about their experiences. Some of them were first Gulf War veterans.
Yes.
That like I haven't talked about this stuff since then, and I'm just now starting to work through this. Having people I can talk to about and feel confident and comfortable voicing it on a platform to essentially strangers. Like a lot of them have never met. And so having that role now essentially of helping people through the mental health crisis, which is something I was entirely unprepared for. And it's something I'm slowly working through and getting better and better at. Fortunately, Greg is phenomenal on that. He's very open about his struggles with depression and other issues. He talked about how he was suicidal for a little bit after getting out of the military. He's like, on paper, it looks like I have it all. He's like, I've got 2 young boys that are healthy. I've got a beautiful wife. I had this amazing career.
Yeah.
He went to UNC for his MBA, but he's like, and he would show these pictures of him smiling with his kids. He's like, this was a man who was suicidal. This is a man who's depressed. This is a man who was having trouble getting out of bed, even though he's putting on this front. And so he is absolutely phenomenal on getting me more aware of this type of stuff and helping a lot of the members talk about their issues because he's experienced it himself and he's gotten to the point where now he's comfortable talking about it.
Are the members talking about it in a chat? Is it email? Mm-hmm. Is it how is this connection happening?
We have a platform, or we're using a platform called Circle. It's a community development platform, so you can customize all your own stuff on all of their back end. And so we have chat forums, we have monthly webinars where we bring in industry experts to talk about different fields where we've had corporate attorneys come on, we've had business brokers come on, we've had franchise experts come on, a whole bunch of different people to give veterans options and bring about general awareness of entrepreneurship. We do weekly office hour calls. Greg host those where literally just talk about anything. Like, you want to talk about transition out of the military, you want to talk about alcoholism, you want to talk about marital issues, you want to talk about content creation, whatever it is you want to talk about.
Awesome.
Let's chat for an hour. We do monthly live events on LinkedIn for non-members. It's a whole bunch of different stuff that we can do through the platform and through LinkedIn that gives us a pretty broad reach to different people. Because ultimately the goal is to get exposure to as many veterans as possible to talk about these different things, making sure that they're aware and it's okay to bring up these issues that a lot of people just suppress.
Yeah, it's so common, isn't it? Jeez. Well, Kevin, I really appreciate it, man. This has been a blast. I know you guys have so much going on, and we'll have links to everything, but is there any, are there a few sites you'd want to point people to if they're listening? Maybe they're driving or working out and they can't look at the links right now. How could they find you on social?
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on here. We actually just went through a rebranding to make it so much simpler. We used to be vetrepreneurcollective.com. Very difficult, very challenging. So we rebranded. We're now just collective.vet is our website, and that has all the different stuff. You can see you can find our podcasts on there. You can find our newsletter. There's information about the community where you can sign up. And then we also opened up a marketing and branding agency that we talk about on there, H&S Media. So if you're a veteran-owned business and you want support with content creation, digital marketing, any of that type of stuff, that's all available on collective.vet. And I'm obviously on LinkedIn pretty prevalently, so you can find me on there, Kevin Seiff, Seiff.
Awesome. And then there's two questions I try to ask everybody at the end of these consistently. One is there anything that you carried with you when you were deployed that had sentimental value, maybe a good luck charm, something that someone gave you that you just wanted to have on you that meant something to you?
I always carried an American flag through my time in the SEAL teams. I didn't have it in the Marine Corps because this is a very different mission there. I was on a very large base. But in the SEAL teams, I always had an American flag strapped onto the back of my kit. It's usually bungee corded on.
Awesome. And then last thing is just kind of looking back at your time in service, obviously two very different branches of service. And, we didn't really talk about the people that you may have, the close calls you may have had or maybe loss in there. But as you look back at that time, would you go back and do it again?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it was a phenomenal experience. There's shitty moments. There were times that I was frustrated and I questioned it a little bit. But I wouldn't change any of it for the world. I'm a big fan in believing that you can't cherry pick certain moments and change. If you want to change something, you have to deal with the ripple effects of everything down the road. So the fact that it took me to 27 to get through BUDS, as opposed to if I had maybe just enlisted and gone earlier, who knows? Maybe I wouldn't have made it then. There's always what ifs, but don't overwhelm yourself with what ifs and just enjoy the experiences that you did have.
Awesome. I really appreciate it, Kevin. Thanks so much for the time, man.
My pleasure, Ryan. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that combat story. Kevin faced something that many of us have had to wrestle with, which is the fear that you might not ever get into combat. And it's a really tough one when you're in the military in general, but in particular the combat arms during these dual wars that we fought. But Kevin has this great approach and he's still trying to give back, which I really appreciate. So I hope you all found some value in that. And I wanted to share just a couple comments. These are 3 5-star Apple reviews that we got. So the first is from SU Tech. It says, I found your podcast when you were a guest on Jack Carr's podcast. The story was so interesting, I thought I'd check it out. It's fantastic. Working through them, our past episodes, at work. Keep it up. You rock. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it, Sandy. It means a ton. I hate talking about myself on other people's podcasts, so I'm glad it wasn't too cringeworthy for you to see me on someone else's. Part of the reason I do it is so that people will find some of the great stories that we have on Combat Story and come back and listen just the way you have. So I'm really grateful that you shared that. The next is from Georgia Boy, U.S. Sailorman. Great name. Says, great interview with Pete Blaber. The truth is both shocking and tragic, and that is absolutely true. This is the second interview we did with Pete. Pete is a former Delta Force commander on the officer side.
amazing background, amazing guy, incredibly cool and collected. He recently wrote a book. He's written several, The Men, the Mission, and Me, but this more recent one was the truth about the fratricide that killed Pat Tillman, who is near and dear to many of us as veterans, given how much he sacrificed to come into service. Pete goes into great depth, interviewing many people involved at his own personal risk from his reputation standpoint, by going against what many people want to just go away, which is the truth that killed Pat Tillman. And he did it all because he was asked by Pat's mother to get to the truth after 4 Army investigations that couldn't quite tell her what happened. And then the last one is from AMDYFYN. It says, one of the best episodes, Green is outstanding, period. That's Mark Green, who is a former Navy SEAL, who kind of talks us through not just his training, but some insane near-death experiences. And we saved one of them. We just highlighted it, but it's in his book, Unsealed. It's definitely worth a read. He talks a lot about making these transitions in life. He's also got one of the toughest stories I've ever heard in notifying a family member of the death of his best friend. It's really hard to hear, but great lessons in there. And even to this day, he hasn't been able to find out from the family how they still feel about him. So I hope that changes one day and we find out about that. With that, I'll let you all go. Hope you're having a great week or weekend wherever you are. And please do stay safe.